I'm on a quest to beat and rate every single PlayStation 2 RPG, TRPG, action RPG, and everything in between. That's over 160 titles. After I beat a game, I'll be making a video where I go through the 10 things I liked and 10 things I did not like in my playthrough. I'll also be giving each game an overall rating and comparing it to the other completed titles. If you want to see my full playthrough, check out my second channel, Low Cloud Aim Gameplay. Now let's get started.
Made in heaven.
It's actually quite amazing that a video game like Shadow Hearts Covenant, with its impressive graphics, phenomenal character design, impeccable quality, and addictive mechanics, has stayed relatively obscure all these years later. You've seen PS2 RPGs live on like Final Fantasy X, Persona 4, and the Kingdom Hearts series. I'd easily place Shadow Hearts Covenant among them, and yet most people haven't even heard of it. I'm going to be referring to my review of the first title in this series, Shadow Hearts, so I'd highly recommend watching that first before moving forward. So let's get into the review. If you'd like to skip the details and just hear a summary of my thoughts, then jump ahead to the time on the screen. If not, then here are 10 things I liked and 10 things I did not like about Shadow Hearts Covenant. Dislike number 10. The SP mechanic. I commented on this mechanic in my review of the original title. Each character has sanity points, and if they reach 0, your character goes berserk. The fusion mechanic is also tied to this, as a fusion costs a certain amount of SP to use. Ultimately, in the first title, I thought it was clever and brought attention to longer battles. The final boss of Shadow Hearts used attacks that lowered your SP, raising that tension. One of the strongest features of Shadow Hearts Covenant is that it took almost everything from the first game and made it better. That is, other than the SP mechanic. In fact, in my playthrough I didn't even see an attack that lowered SP, making this even less utilized than the original. Most of the time you pretty much ignored the SP mechanic altogether. There were a few times that a longer battle threatened to push my characters into berserk mode, but easily accessible SP healing items took care of that. I see the vision for this mechanic, but I'd say it was more of an afterthought in the sequel. Like number 10, alternative outfits. I love any and all cosmetic changes in video games. Give me lightsabers in Star Wars Survivor, a gangster suit in Resident Evil 4, pretty much all armor in Xenoblade Chronicles, and everything in the Trails of Cold Steel series. I love it all. Shadow Hearts Covenant introduced in the late game 3 alternative outfits: Anastasia's kimono, Lucia's wedding dress, and Karen's dating outfit. Yes, I would have loved to see outfits for all the other characters, or at least for our main man Yuri. It would have been cool to have his old brown coat back from the first game, but unfortunately that didn't happen. And yes, before you say it, it is not lost on me that this was a fan service play. But still, the outfits looked great, and it was fun to see some of the characters' clothing change up in my playthrough. Dislike number 9. Rewriting Albert Simon. I mentioned in my previous review that Albert Simon is one of the better villains I've ever seen in a video game. His introduction is magnificent, and his ruthless charm permeates your entire playthrough. Heading into Shadow Hearts Covenant, I expected his legacy to continue, but that didn't quite happen. Covenant is a nearly flawless sequel, perfectly blending your experience of the first game and continuing forward with satisfying accuracy. But when it came to Albert Simon, I'd say it failed here. Covenant tries to rewrite our original villain by making it seem like he was protecting the world from an even worse evil. It's almost forced on you that Yuri and he have developed a sort of friendship through their battle with each other. Look, that's all fine and dandy, but the Albert Simon in the first game was a straight-up murdering psychopath. He performed disgusting human experiments, destroyed all of Shanghai, and killed Alice's father. So yeah, the rewriting of his character is a little misleading, and one of the only story choices I didn't necessarily agree with. Like number 9, Kato and Yoshiko's story. Another great part of Shadow Hearts Covenant is how it pays off story threads from the previous title. One of those that was more satisfying a story thread than I had originally thought was the relationship between Kato and Yoshiko Kawashima. In Shadow Hearts, Yoshiko is a hardened Japanese agent working to fight against Deiwei. She gains a bumbling assistant named Kato, and they join forces with Yuri and his party. Kato was insignificant enough that I didn't even mention him in my first review. In Shadow Hearts Covenant, you find out that Yoshiko has died and Kato has worked his way up the corrupt Japanese government. In Disc 1, you really only engage with Kato and his goals passively. In Disc 2, you randomly take control of a female bio-soldier named Oka. Oka wakes up and is immediately put through trials in a training facility ran by Kato. This section of the game is vibing Metal Gear Solid. It was also a good way to establish the villains of Disc 2. But a player who is paying attention will notice that Oka's uncanny similarity to Yoshiko. Come to find out, she's a clone created using the Amigre manuscript, or the Book of the Dead. Kato, in his desperate love for Yoshiko, sought out the document to revive her. But Oka ends up being a pale imitation, as she lacks the memories and personality of Yoshiko. Despite this, Oka ends up sacrificing her life to save Kato, thus putting into motion the events of the endgame. The developers could have easily just left Kato to fade away with the original game, but instead, they built him into the story in a way that made him one of the main antagonists. This was smart, as players who experience Shadow Hearts will already have an investment, not only in Kato, but his relationship with Yuri's past. Dislike number 8. The final dungeon is lazy. I have an issue with final dungeons. I feel as if all the passion of the developers is spent by the time most games reach the climactic dungeon, and because of this, most forethought is left behind. They usually devolve into some hellscape dreamworld garbage like Final Fantasy X or any Trails game. The final dungeon in the original Shadow Hearts was good. Not great, but not bad. It had a few interesting mini-bosses that test you before the final fight. Covenant's final dungeon is straight up boring. It really felt like it had been thrown together in the last second. It's minimally designed, with a strange mechanism in the middle that looks like one of those Simon Says toys. You have to align all the colors going from floor to floor. Once you finish, you are warped to the bottom and continue to the final boss. The worst kind of puzzles are the ones where you know the answer before you get to the end. Take, for example, any push the block puzzle from the Zelda series. This leaves you just going through the motions, and it's not very fun. And that was the case for Covenant's final dungeon. Like number 8. Fusions are actually useful. In the original Shadow Hearts, the single best strategy for Yuri was to optimize the fire fusion for a game-breaking physical attacker. This unfortunately meant that Shadow Hearts' 24 other summons were practically useless. Covenant still has some useless summons, but not nearly as many as the first title. The Fire Fusion returns as your standard physical class, but the level 3 Earth Fusion ends up passing fire in physical damage output. Getting Neo-Amon gives you the second best fusion in the game. That is until you unlock the Final Fusion, which absolutely obliterates any challenge in Shadow Hearts Covenant. Honestly, I was just happy to be using more than a single fusion for the majority of my playthrough. Dislike number 7. This game is not newcomer friendly. While playing Shadow Hearts Covenant, I kept on asking the same question. How is this not an immediate classic? Why is Covenant not on everyone's best RPGs ever made list? Why is it not a candidate for a remake? It's so good, it's challenging with a fantastic cast, engaging mechanics, and a well thought out story. So what's the problem? Well, it became fairly obvious as I made my way through the story. You see, sequels are a tricky business. You want to build up the current fan base by introducing new players while also retaining those who played the first title. This leaves you with two options. Do you opt to make a pseudo standalone title that contains just enough veiled callbacks to the original that fans will be appeased but newcomers won't be confused? Or do you go the opposite way and lean into the fact that this is a continuation of the previous title and expect newcomers to go back to the beginning to get the whole story? Shadow Hearts Covenant picked the latter. Covenant is a hardcore sequel. There are so many story beats that rely on the player's knowledge of what happened in the original title. It gives no recap other than a few static screenshots and maybe a sentence or two of dialogue. If you're starting with Covenant, you will be lost. Now that's only if you don't beat the game. The ending actually addresses this perfectly, and to be honest, fans deserved Covenant, even if it meant the series would stay in obscurity. I challenge you to find a sequel in any media that has as much reverence for the original story as Shadow Hearts Covenant. Like number 7, Yasunori Mitsuda finally makes the battle theme. I mentioned in the previous review that Yasunori Mitsuda, composer of titles like Chrono Trigger and Xenoblade Chronicles, composed the best music in Shadow Hearts. Well, he's back, and has once again completely surpassed expectations. Now again, Shadow Heart's composer Yoshitaka Hirota did a great job. And newcomer Kenji Ito did as well, but Mitsuda stole the show with pieces like The Past. And Field of the Dog God. But the most exciting thing here is that he corrected one of my biggest criticisms of the original title, the battle theme. Hirota's new battle theme for Covenant is inoffensive, but Mitsuda's score for the Astaroth battle is completely next level. Take a listen. This is what every other Shadow Hearts battle theme strives to be. Dislike number 6. Disc 1 is kinda boring. Shadow Hearts Covenant is broken up into halves represented by 2 discs. The first disc follows the storyline of Yuri's search for a cure to the mistletoe curse he was given at the beginning. This leads him on a wild goose chase where he faces off against some colorful individuals. His search eventually leads him to Russia, where you meet the main antagonist of Disc 1, Rasputin. Yes, that Rasputin. I have a few issues with this first half. Yes, it was still very fun. This is a great game, but the stakes never seem to get high enough to warrant my investment. I don't mind the whole let's travel around the world until we've gathered all our party members section of any RPG. It almost feels like a rite of passage. And the cast is entertaining enough to make these standalone stories interesting. No, the real issue lies in the villains. Lenny and Veronica, with their weird squilling henchmen, just come off as a complete joke. And don't seem like a threat at all. It's even worse when you find out that this dude is leading them.
I'm sorry, I guess I overslept.
Well, you had quite a workout.
I think it's cool that Shadow Hearts incorporated actual historical figures into their story, no matter how inaccurate it is. But Rasputin is just lame. First of all, he looks like a villain you'd see in an episode of some cartoon. His design is terrible. Not just that, but his plan makes no sense, and in the end, he goes out with the bang of a half-deflated balloon. It makes the whole experience feel longer than it is. Luckily, the phenomenal battle system, open party customizability, and Disc 2 is all there to save the experience. Like number 6, the equipment rocks. Accessories and equipment have always been an issue for most RPGs. I mean, what more can you do with an accessory other than increase a specific stat? Sometimes you might be able to add a status element or something, but for the most part, accessories fall to the wayside as practically useless. Shadow Hearts Covenant does not have this issue. Every accessory is so completely unique that gaining one you've never heard of immediately demands that you pause to look at your inventory. All of this is made possible because of the Judgment Ring and additional battle mechanics that give a lot of options when playing with balance. I spoke about the Mind's Eye in my original review. It's a great way to talk about accessories in this game. It of course makes a return here. The Mind's Eye makes you blind to the Judgment Ring, but in exchange doubles your physical attack power. Another example of cool accessories is the small jug, which in exchange for doubling the amount of SP I lost per turn, increased all my stats. Or how about the demon necklace, which doubles both the damage my character gave as well as received. A party member can have 3 accessories at one time, and this was the exact setup I gave Yuri. With the Mind's Eye, Small Jug, and Demon Necklace, I made a glass cannon. In contrast, I gave Lucia magic buffing accessories as well as an accessory that brought her back to life once during battle. This was because she was my main support unit and I needed her to survive any devastating team wiping attacks. All in all, Covenant completely sticks the landing when it comes to intuitive and clever equipment design. Dislike number 5, Joachim and Lucia. Covenant's cast is awesome, and I'm going to discuss them shortly, but there were 2 characters that I felt didn't get enough attention and development during the course of the story. Joachim is part of the Valentine vampire family, the very family that Keith from the original title came from. In fact, I think we met Joachim in the first game in his Golden Bat form. But in a strange turn of events, unlike Keith's gentlemanly demeanor and more vampire-like traits, Joachim is, I don't know, like a luchador or something? It's completely goofy in a way that tees him up to be the comedic relief in this group. That would be fine, except that title is occupied by many other party members as well. This game does not lack in goofiness. I think Joachim could have worked if we had gotten more. He's introduced as a vigilante willing to sacrifice himself to help others. And he joins the group because, well, I don't really know. Don't get me wrong, the goofiness is charming. For example, you can find random things lying around the world like a frozen tuna or a small submarine that Joachim will take as a weapon. But I can't say I felt anything when it came to his character motives. There were some hints that he was developing a sort of brotherly relationship with Anastasia, but that's never really explored. Lucia has a very strong introduction, one that still cracks me up to this day. You see, she's a fortune teller and our group goes to meet with her in order to gather some information. This scene where they watch her dance is just too awesome.
Yeah.
I wonder how she's doing that.
Yeah.
She's not using any wires.
Yeah.
After Yuri is finished ogling the busty fortune teller, they are led to a strange dungeon and ultimately betrayed by Lucia. This was all a misunderstanding, and in order to make things right, of course, Lucia's grandmother sends Lucia with our team for training or something. And that's really it. Lucia never adds any insight into the group's dynamic and mostly just follows along. The only time she speaks is to let the player know that she's kinda dumb. It's ironically hilarious that this is the second time in this PS2 challenge that a large-breasted fortune teller has joined the party, only to end up not getting any development. And it's a shame, as I feel she could have easily been incorporated more heavily into the narrative. Perhaps give her some ties to Kato or something. Or at least a love story between her and Joachim. That might have served to make both characters interesting. Like number 5, the cast. The original Shadow Hearts had a pretty good cast of characters. Yuri was awesome and Albert Simon stole the show. Aside from those 2, the rest were serviceable. Covenant introduces a completely bonkers cast and it's amazing. Not just that, but many of the characters, minus the 2 I just spoke about, receive cutscenes that flesh out their characters in clever ways. You have the silent and loyal Wolf Blanca, who's a mix of friendly pup and stoic warrior. Anastasia is a complete standout. She's the Princess of Russia and joins the team to fight Rasputin. Anytime she interacts with a party member, it makes the scene better. Once you get to Disc 2 and Kurando is introduced, this happens. And after that, her crush on Kurando becomes a focal point of her character and is paid off in the end with this image. Man, I love this. Karen is another strong candidate. She plays a secondary role to the main protagonist, Yuri, but this is ultimately her story, not his. That becomes abundantly clear at the end of the game. I just really appreciate the delicate balance played between her and Yuri. Her mostly one-sided relationship is handled well and never served to degrade her in any way, and that's not easy in storytelling. And that leads me to Yuri. Yuri was pretty cool in the original title, but he is even better in Covenant. His nonchalant, laid-back attitude works so well here.
Anyway, he never did tell us where he bought that pillow, did he?
Almost every interaction he's a part of is a gag in one way or another, which makes his serious moments all the better. It's obvious that his goofiness is a means of keeping people at a distance. I love this intentional character trait, as the goofiness of the entire game can go a little far. I feel like unique RPG party members is a lost art these days. I mean, what happened to cats riding stuffed animals, ninja wolves, or battle-hardened puppets? Dislike number 4. We have an NPC problem. You want to know a game that did NPCs right? Dark Souls. I can think back through my playthrough and remember almost every single NPC I engaged with. I can even recall some of their individual stories. Because of this, side quests that are found by engaging with NPCs worked beautifully. Shadow Heart's Covenant's NPCs are hot garbage. There's a side quest involving a castle where one of Yuri's best fusions is found. You want to know how you start that quest? Oh, it's easy. You just have to talk to this fat guy in a suit. You know, the copy-pasted NPC you'll find all over the game. How'd you know he was significant and that speaking to him there would net you a massively important side quest?
I don't know, Jeff, has it? I must have missed that. Red card.
Covenant practically demands you to walk around and speak to every NPC systematically after every major story landmark in order to find some of the more obscure content. I mean, are you really supposed to just randomly run into Margaret from the first game here in this exact spot by chance? That's just plain ridiculous. Like number 4, the battle system has been upgraded and it is peak turn-based combat. The original Shadow Hearts battle system was a great foundation. It managed to introduce new mechanics while keeping things relatively simple. That simplicity is out the window with Covenant, and it's all the better for it. I suppose I should start with what they did to the Judgment Ring. Unlike the first game, you can now manipulate the size and layout of your ring. This includes how many sections you have to hit, the size of the critical areas, adding status effects to your normal attacks, and if you want to use a professional ring or a normal ring. A professional ring increases your damage, but if you miss any sections, you won't be able to attack. But the battle system upgrades don't stop there. Instead of your characters lining up to fight, you can position characters on the battlefield. Well, you can't really position them, but yours and the enemy locations will move and change, making AoE attacks strategic. This positioning birthed my absolute favorite mechanic in the game, the new combo mechanic. If you position your characters next to each other, you'll be able to pull off a combo attack. This is a high-risk, high-reward strategy that can increase your damage exponentially. Not just that, but it's the funnest way to play this game. Setting up beautiful combos that have the enemy juggled in the air for extended periods of time is so satisfying. I'd say the only mechanic that didn't make sense was the weight mechanic. Light enemies are easily tossed in the air and fall slower, while heavier enemies are the opposite. It seemed like there were some deeper mechanics to this, but it didn't make much sense and led to frustrating situations where I couldn't even hit the enemy. Aside from that though, the battle system now ranks up there as one of my favorites of all time. Dislike number 3, the bad character mechanics. So Covenant went an interesting route with its individual party members. Instead of introducing a sort of materia system where you change characters around, or a class system where each character has a specific role to play, Covenant gave each character a completely unique mechanic specific to them. Some of these were successful, and some of these were not. Let's start with what didn't work. First is the most offensive mechanic, which is Karen's Nibelung scenes. These are scenes of a play that give Karen useful sword attacks. The reason this is an absolutely terrible mechanic is that the Nibelung scenes are acquired from talking to certain NPCs. I've already explained why this is an issue. It is not fun to run around hoping to find some random guy who will give you a necessary upgrade to one of your skills. That's stupid. If the Nibelung scenes had been hidden in chests, or placed in specific challenging areas, or hell, made a reward for these cool arena battles, then I would have forgiven it. Next is the tarot cards. Lucia, unlike the other members, has two mechanics. That's because one is good and one is stupid. The tarot cards provide some random buff, debuff, or straight up punishment to the battle. You blindly pick a card and hope it's good. It's not fun, and many of the cards are hidden in obscure ways, so I didn't bother looking for them. The final mechanic I did not like was Geppetto's doll dresses. Now the dresses themselves were fun. It's pretty cool and a little sus how much effort went into making this dress-up minigame interesting. In order to unlock dresses, you have to find, I guess they're softcore porn cards, and give them to the very, very gay shopkeeper. Once given, he will create a dress. Here's my issue. What do the dresses do? They obviously change your character's element, but I never felt like that had any bearing on gameplay. It also gives you an elemental spell, but it isn't very good. Your normal spells are much better. So ultimately, this is strictly for aesthetics, which is almost forgivable. Like number 3, the good character mechanics. Now putting aside those 3, let's move on to the good mechanics, or at least the non-offensive ones. I've already mentioned Yuri's fusion mechanic, so we'll move on to the other members. First is Blanca's wolf stamps. This is actually really important if you want Blanca to be a beast of a healer in the endgame. Blanca will randomly find wolves scattered along the path that he'll challenge to a one-on-one battle. These wolves are incredibly unique, including a zombie, an alien, and a wooden possessed toy. The skills Blanca obtains from completing these battles are way worth it. My only gripe is the final few bouts, which are hidden in such obscure places that I doubt any player would be able to find them without a guide. Joaquim's mechanic is similar to Blanca's, only this time it's not with multiple opponents, but one. Joaquim's master will be waiting in just 2 locations throughout the game and can be challenged at any time. So pretty much, these are one-on-one boss battles that are tackled at any point in the story. Anastasia is your blue mage of the group, and with her camera can take pictures of enemies, capturing their souls and learning their abilities. This is pretty cool, honestly, and if I had used Anastasia for my playthrough, I think I would have really enjoyed collecting all of these. The spells she gains aren't half bad either. The final mechanic is Lucia's oils, which I thought was such a perfect idea. Lucia is obviously the support mage of the team, and her oils rocket her up to the top spot. Throughout your playthrough, you'll collect different oils that, if mixed, produce many different status increases. This can range from attack and defense buffs to healing MP. The best are the ones that increase your critical rate to 100%, setting your characters up for devastating damage. Dislike number 2. Cramming side content in at the end. I know what you're thinking. Didn't the original Shadow Hearts do this as well? Yes, it did. Is that any different here? Well, kind of. Covenant's side content is much more robust and heavily tied to the narrative than the original. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me explain why this landed as my number 2 dislike of this game. So here you are at the climax of the story. You've fought through a dozen different villains to get here, and the emotional peak of Yuri's adventure is about to reach its summit. You enter the final dungeon and view a cutscene inside Yuri's mind. Now let me pause here. What if I told you that hours of content just got unlocked and is now accessible? Does that make any sense whatsoever? Any at all? Well, that is exactly what happens. Almost every character's side quest to gain their final weapons and final skills is locked behind this very moment. And let me remind you, that isn't before you go into the final dungeon, it's only after you enter the final dungeon. This means that you need to back out and travel the world, tying up loose ends of stories introduced in the main plot. The original Shadow Hearts did this as well, but the majority of that content was non-consequential. But I don't think this entire side story between Saki and Kurando is non-consequential. Why wouldn't this whole section be a part of the main plot? Or at least be accessible before the climax? I could go on with more examples, but the simple point is there was absolutely no reason, in a game where side content is already obscure enough, to demand that the player immediately leave the final dungeon, halting the emotional peak of the story to, I don't know, go see what everyone's up to? I mean, the world's coming to an end and it's like, hey, I'll go visit some of my friends. Like number 2, Disc 2 absolutely rocks. If you're patient enough to get through Disc 1's entertaining but kind of boring storyline, you will be greeted with pure RPG gold. It starts off with you gaining your final party member, Kurando, and going up against the corrupt Japanese government. This has you traveling to dozens of unique locations with near-perfect story pacing that seems to pay off what little came in Disc 1, while also setting up new and even better storylines. Oka's story section immediately sets up sympathetic villains, which the story was sorely lacking. I wish that we could have gotten this sooner, but it was well worth waiting for. It might sound like I'm being a little too harsh on Disc 1, but that's only because the quality of this RPG sets up astronomical expectations. And only if you play through the entire game will those expectations be met, or in my case, completely surpassed. Dislike number 1. No more horror theme. The horror RPG is a genre that I would love to see more of. Bloodborne is one of my favorite games, and its gritty gothic horror was so appealing. The original Shadow Hearts was light-hearted at times, but ultimately, it was a very dark story centered around horror themes like haunted houses and cannibal villages. It played into the tropes of the horror genre perfectly, and because of it, the original Shadow Hearts stands out from so many Final Fantasy X clones on the PS2. Shadow Hearts Covenant did not do this. Now, I'd like to pretend to not know why, but I do. It was for the market. Shadow Hearts was a bloody M-rated role-playing game. Covenant was a teen-rated fantasy adventure that just so happened to be set in the same world as the original. And can I pause real quick to talk about this? How did this game get a teen rating with so much nudity? Sure, Shadow Hearts was bloody, but really? Anyway, dropping the horror theme and aiming for the safer rating no doubt helped Shadow Hearts Covenant appeal to a wider audience. But at what cost? A horror RPG was such a novel idea back then. Hell, it still is. I'm convinced that if developers Sacknoth had stuck to their guns, that Shadow Hearts might still be a living, thriving IP to this day. Now, this by no means makes Shadow Hearts Covenant a bad game. It's just that we traded unsettling horror and gothic themes for a historically inaccurate fairy tale comedy. And that's not bad, just not as unique. Like number 1. That ending. Okay, we're diving into spoiler territory, so if you don't want the ending spoiled, then jump ahead to my summary. For those of you who stayed, let's do this. One dark night, a man sneaks aboard a train, spurred on by a voice in his head telling him to save a young woman named Alice. This man, Yuri, fights evil warlocks, ancient Chinese mages, and hell itself to get to the bottom of Alice's father's murder. During their journey, the two fall in love, and Alice, growing close to him, uses her spiritual abilities to absorb the malice inside Yuri's heart. After battling a god and saving the world, the two board a train to head home. Alice, tired from the long battle, closes her eyes and falls asleep on Yuri's shoulder, never to wake again. Fast forward 1 year, and Yuri has been hiding out in Alice's hometown. He's hunted by the Vatican and German government, where he meets and saves a woman named Karen. This ex-German soldier, who happens to share many qualities with Yuri's own mother, joins him as they investigate the deep corruption among the world's elite. During this journey, Yuri's old friend Kato obtains the Emigre manuscript, and after learning its secrets, gives it to Yuri, allowing him the chance to bring Alice back to life. Karen, having fallen in love with Yuri, accepts that he will never return her feelings, and waits outside the chamber as Yuri attempts to bring Alice back to life. The attempt fails, but not before this happens.
Yuri.
Alice.
I love you.
I love you too.
Learning of Kato's plan to use the powers he's discovered to go back 100 years and rewrite the world, Yuri and his party head out to the stone pillar to stop him. After a grueling fight, where I totally didn't kick this guy's ass. After the dust of battle clears, Yuri realizes it's too late to stop the spell. He and his companions dream up the world that was, and each is slowly taken away into time.
Karen,
What?
thank you.
After his final words to Karen, Yuri is reunited with Alice once more. The credits roll and we see all of our party members enjoying life. Then we are taken to a dark scene in front of the Japanese embassy. Yuri's father exits the building but sees a beautiful young woman unconscious on the ground. Yes, Karen is Yuri's mother. But that isn't even the best part. The original Shadow Hearts had two endings. One where Alice lives and one where Alice dies. After my playthrough of the first game, I assumed the ending where Alice dies was canon. You know, because she's dead in the sequel. But that isn't true.
Whoa, that's bad. I almost overslept. It'll be here soon.
Both are canonical. Shadow Hearts Covenant ends with Yuri gaining a second chance to save Alice. If you play through the first game once more, but get the good ending, then you will see the true closure to Yuri and Alice's story. I don't know if this was planned from the beginning or not, but this is peak storytelling. Shadow Hearts Covenant, and especially Shadow Hearts ending, will go down as one of the best video game ending experiences I've ever had.
As the warlock said in the end, even if an age of winter comes bringing the harshest hardships, I intend to live on with my new family.
Shadow Hearts Covenant is a sequel before anything else. It's a solid turn-based RPG with a mostly phenomenal cast, and a storyline that meanders in the first disc but focuses in the second disc and manages to deliver an incredibly satisfying end to fans of the original game. The battle system's been improved with an addictive combo system that rewards precision with increased damage. The graphics are polished beyond recognition from the first game, and putting aside some cringy and awkward writing, the entire package comes together as one of the best RPGs on the PS2. I am placing Shadow Hearts Covenant as a must-play title, making it the second must-play game of this challenge, next to its predecessor, Shadow Hearts. Thank you so much for sticking around through these reviews and supporting this passion project of mine. And thank you to all my Patreon supporters. If you would like to support me even further, check out my Patreon page. I have some Patreon exclusive tier lists on there as well as some other perks. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to follow along with my playthroughs, subscribe to my other channel, Low Cloud Aim Gameplay. Bye!